homily or a sermon, listen and you will hear.
The purpose of a homily or a sermon is to break open the word, to help you to hear and me to hear that God is still alive and acting and influencing our lives. This helps us to learn the messages that God has for us and how we can live these out. May the words of my lips and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Ooh. How many of you have ever gone fishing? Few of you. How many of you have ever fished with a net? Ooh, there's been a couple of you. Yay. So for those of you who have fished with a net, is it easy? I see heads shaking no. I would imagine, because I know that rope, when it gets wet, is very heavy. But if you've ever seen the YouTube videos of the fishermen that take the large nets and they just swirl them and it unfurls and it lands in the water and sinks down and then they pull it in. I can't imagine doing that all night long. Throwing it out there, pulling it in, throwing it out there, pulling it in. By now, the word of Easter has spread around the countryside. Everybody has heard that Jesus died, Jesus was risen, and that Jesus had come and shown himself to some of the disciples. But the disciples themselves are now saying, now what? Now what do we do? Now who do we follow? Now how do we eat? And so a group of them went back to Galilee. If you remember the very first time we heard about Simon and the sons of Zebedee, James and John, they were out fishing or they were fixing their nets. And that's when Jesus had said, come, follow me. So they and Nathanael and Thomas the twin and two others went to Galilee. And there they waited and waited. And Peter, Simon says, okay, that's it, I'm going fishing. And the others say, yay, we'll go too. And they hop in the boat and they fish all night long, throwing out the net, hauling it in, throwing out the net, hauling it in, throwing out the net, all night long, and do not catch a single fish. Suddenly they hear a voice from the shore, and I can picture them turning to figure out who that is, and they don't know who that is. But the voice, the man, says to them, you haven't caught anything, have you? They said, no. And he says, throw the net out on the right side of the boat. Now I know what I would be tempted to say to somebody who said that to me after I've been fishing all night. And they did not know who this was, but something resonated. And they threw out the net, and it said 153 fish. All the fish you can imagine. And I want you to show all the fish that are out there. Show us all your fish. 153 fish. More fish than there were people present. And these fish, they head back to shore, and John, the beloved disciple, says, it's Jesus. And Simon Peter jumps out of the boat, and he runs to shore. And it is Jesus. And the others bring the boat into shore. And Jesus is there cooking fish, and he has bread. And he said, bring some of the fish. And they ate breakfast together. And the second part of this story tells how Simon Peter professes his love for Jesus, how he is empowered to care for the people of God. But I'm stuck with the fish today. What was it with these fish? And I think in part the fish symbolize God's love for us. The fish, because they turned and they listened to Jesus, They got the good news. Throw it out on the right side. And when we turn and listen to Jesus, we're given the message that abundance will come into our lives, that those questions will be answered. I think of the fellowship that brought those disciples together and helped them together to haul the nets. And Jesus showed them, when you work together and listen to me, the catch will be abundant, more than you can imagine. It's an invitation. Jesus invited them to throw the net out one more time. And again, what an abundant response when we hear and follow the invitation of Jesus. But I think most of all, this story is a story of love. And hopefully these fish that I'm inviting you to take home will be a symbol of God's love. If you turn it sideways, you see it's made out of 4 hearts. 4 hearts. Because God's love is so abundant, ever present, everywhere, all the time. Even when we are alone or lonely or fearful and don't know it. God's love is stronger than death. God's love is stronger than anything we could ask or imagine. God's love, when we turn to Jesus and listen, is always there, always. And when we can't feel that, we're invited to be in fellowship, to be with each other, so we can remind each other of God's love in the actions that we do for each other, in the ways that we are together, to remind each other in tough times that God's love is always there. So I invite you to take home this abundance of fish, to remember the invitation, the fellowship, that we need to turn and listen to Jesus, and that love is always there. Amen.